it allows you to kind of see the humanity in them, and you're like, oh, this is why. Like that song means something to you because it hit you in a certain moment.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Portable Trevor here, and today we have a very special guest. He was my English teacher and my soccer coach in high school. Please welcome Tucker Blackman. What's up, man?
Hello, man. Good to see you. Good to see your face again. It's been a while. It feels like it hasn't been a while, but it has been a while.
Yeah, so funny story. Until a couple months ago, me and Tucker, we hadn't seen each other in like 8 years or something like that, like since I graduated high school. And then I started working on this documentary for a classmate I had in high school and teammate for soccer. And I was like, I got to interview Tucker. So I hit him up and he was like, yeah, man, come hang out for a weekend. And it was a blast hanging out with you, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I enjoyed the time too. And it seems like, what was it? Was it February? I feel like it was.
Yeah, it was like the end of February. It was still cold.
Yeah, it feels like it's really strange because, of course, the state of what we live in now, but it feels like it was not long ago, but we're now, approaching several months. But every day is kind of the same now, at least in my world. I don't want to assume for others, but it's kind of the same.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that for the show. Like, you're a teacher at a school and you had a lot of kids relying on you to give them an education, and now you have to do it like online. Has that been difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I've been downloading a lot of just YouTube videos and just putting it up for them. So I don't really have to teach. No, I'm joking. I haven't done anything like that. No,
this isn't Mr. Blackman.
Just click the link.
That kind of teacher.
No, I mean, my school's an incredible place. And so they were really on top of this before I would say I was even on top of the idea of it. I mean, we literally met and said, hey, this may happen. And we had a full on, like, here's what we're going to do when this happens. We think it's going to happen after the Masters. And it actually happened. We met on, I think, a Wednesday. And it actually happened on like that Friday. I think that Thursday night, the NBA closed down. And that like Friday, everything else just started following suit. And so that Monday, we did not return to school. So literally my school had, kudos to the administration there because they had a plan, and so we went remote learning immediately. Like if you want an idea, we went remote learning like March 15th or 16th, whenever things started closing up. That's really early. So, and we actually had a format for it and everything, and a template that we were going to do. So it was really seamless. And so as much as you can in remote learning, I have been teaching my kids for the past month and a half. Like normal, doing screencasts, doing Google Meets, doing all kinds of stuff like that. Same way I would do it in a classroom. It's just they don't get my inexorable wit face to face. And my excellent hair. They just have to see it in screenshots. So
absolutely. They're like, oh, I can almost touch it. Have they been able to learn pretty well, like remotely? Or
I mean,
do you think it's been about the same?
I've had a couple one-on-one Google Meets to help some students out, but they're pretty awesome students. So, and I'm pretty detail oriented in like, here's what I expect, just teacher talk, guiding questions, et cetera. I provide a pretty clear template of what I expect and then give them any opportunity to ask questions. And so it's been tough. Nobody likes it because human beings are kind of built for community, I think. So nobody enjoys this. Maybe, you've seen the Trey Kennedy videos of like the introvert versus extrovert, of course. I just showed my age. That's peak Facebook right there. That's I'm not appealing to the right audience. But yeah, yeah, I mean, it it has been it's been trying, but we've made it through it. So
That's great. And what have you and your family been doing during this time?
um I train the boys at soccer almost every day. We get out and do some work. We go on walks every single day. And then I've read a couple things. I read Ben Folds' memoir, and then I've read Pearl Jam's 20. Here's the thing: it says up there, English teacher Tucker Blackman. Nice title. So I typically when I read for pleasure during the school year, I don't read something. I'm not pulling out Dostoevsky or something wild. I'm just kind of like I want to read something casually. So that's what I've been reading and just basically doing that. Bought a bicycle, been riding bikes with Liam.
That's cool.
That's it. Yeah.
I've been taking a lot of walks too. Like there's my neighborhood just does a big circle, and then there's a really long, like almost greenway type sidewalk that I can walk on.
Oh, cool.
So it's been nice to see some parts of Georgia I've never really explored before.
Isn't it weird how I was commenting on this this pandemic. It's been horrible in a lot of ways, but it's been a very reflective thing too. It's allowed, I think, everybody some space to think. And I'm not downplaying like economic tragedy and deaths, and it's definitely a horrible situation. But from my end, it's been nice to have a little slowdown.
Yeah, absolutely. I've ever since this happened, I've had to work from home, and I still work my full-time job from like 10 to 6, and then after that, I'm able to work on like my documentaries, or sometimes my roommates will be like, "Hey, let's film this silly sketch," and I'm like, "Let's do it." So, it's definitely given me a lot of time to like just sit down and think about like what do I want to do right now, and like how am I going to overcome this? Because I'm kind of a person that if I sit still for too long, I might go insane. So I know that you're kind of the same way.
I am. It's probably a good creative boon too for you, like a little bit of a muse, if you will. Like something to sit and reflect and have that time to dream up some ideas and neat things.
Yeah, and that's.
I wish,
Go ahead.
I wish I could show off my education and say like there there are some writers that wrote some of their best things during pandemics, like during lockdowns and during if you want to go biblical, you have John on Patmos who's writing, but it's interesting. I don't know. It's interesting to think about that idea of like kind of being forced to sit and be creative. I did not show off my education, but I wanted to.
Can you give us some examples of like what you're teaching in the class?
I mean, we're just finishing up. We're finishing up Jekyll and Hyde, and then I'm reading Into the Wild with the AP kids, getting them ready for the AP test. Into the Wild is fascinating. Jekyll and Hyde's good, but Into the Wild to me is probably a top 10 book. It's just kind of nonfiction fiction because it's real events that happen, but the book is written in such a poetic way, and there's this juxtaposition of all these. You have Jack London, and you have Thoreau and Emerson. You have all these authors that their works are kind of sequenced in throughout. And it's a fascinating read. It's very philosophical, a lot of transcendental elements in there, but it's an interesting dynamic to think about. And kids react so at a base level, for lack of a better word, like almost a visceral level of reaction. They either hate Chris McCandless or they love him. So it's interesting.
So I imagine a lot of your students are probably non-readers for like pleasure or anything. They're probably reading for like a novel for the first time in your class. So is there a way that you teach kids like, hey, like reading can be cool, like check this out? Because you kind of did that for me, even though I'm still not an avid reader. But I remember we read a Frankenstein in
Oh yeah,
class, and
it's a
I was
tough
just like,
read.
it is a tough read. But I remember you telling us like, I mean, I don't remember every detail, but I remember you telling us like, hey, like just uh, read this like slowly and read it in a way that like helps you picture what's happening. And I was just like, okay, that's pretty cool. So how do you go about that?
I mean, I think that's important too, to slow down and, and it's tedious, but the things that are substantial and are of value, I think they take time to digest. And so, I still practice that like slow reading, and we annotate. I remember at Bradley, there was an AP class, um, and maybe I know some people were in that class. I'm talking about the one with like Jacob Barnes and
Yeah,
Caleb Reese and like,
sure,
and
dude.
we literally spent an hour and 25 minutes. And this is going to sound so like so many people are going to be like, this sounds like torturous. But we spent an hour and 25 minutes on a paragraph in Heart of Darkness, like literally one paragraph. And when I say that, we didn't just sit there reading that paragraph for an hour and a half. I mean, but we slowed down and we just kind of looked at it and we're like, what's this reflective of? I think, to answer your question finally, is you get to the idea that all these books that are written, what makes a book a classic is it touches on something that's innately human, and relatable, relevant. Hundreds of years later, you say, wow, man, people still feel this way. This is still what it's like to be just a person trying to find your way, find meaning, find redemption, find grace, find compassion, companionship, etc. And when you read something and you slow down and you say like, what would this really be like? And then usually it helps to bring in some sort of I'm pretty quick with pop culture references, and you bring in something, this is just like this, and then they're like, wow, it really is. It is exactly how we are today. And that to me, it takes time, and you have to tell usually a humorous anecdote. I usually tell something from my own life, something that's pretty funny. And I try to, this sounds insane, but I always try to make those anecdotes organic. Like in my annotations, like I have annotations for like, okay, talk about this point. This is a big moment, but I don't write in there, tell this story of Liam, like I don't write that. I just, whatever pops into my head, and maybe that'll get me fired one day, but whatever pops
Depending on the story.
yeah, I tell that story, and I'm just like, because I think that comes off in a much more natural way than here at this point. I tell this story, and I think I was telling one on original. We were talking about original sin, and we were talking about just the idea of a person being like born, like flawed. Like essentially, everybody thinks babies are innocent. I said, and babies are innocent in a lot of ways. That there's some truth in that, but they're also extremely sinful. Like, have you been around a baby? Like, they will like I've seen my own children, and we don't spank as a family. We don't. That's just not something we do. So like striking is not like a thing that we've modeled. It's not like I'm like punching. I'm not Rocky, training for the next bout. And I've seen like Sophie like just like look at her fist like ball, like somebody takes something from her, she balls up her fist and just like weapon, and so kids are selfish. They want what they want at that moment. And I tell the story of kids just kind of being innately self-involved. And I remember like Liam went over to a friend's house and they were battling over this toy. And Kelly says the mom was like, "Now, Will, what matters more? Toys or friends?" And her son just started crying and was like, friends matter more. And this has clearly been something she'd been hammering in this kid's head. And the kid, gives the toy to Liam, and Kelly's like, "Oh my gosh, this is mothering at its best, right? Like this is peak mom. I've missed out on this." So months later, Liam has a different friend over, and Liam and this friend are battling over a toy, very commonplace thing, right? And they're fighting over it. And Kelly like interjects and she's like, "Liam," he turns finally, "what matters more, toys or friends?" And Liam, without batting an eye, just like, "Toys." Like, like, yeah, stupid. And so, I mean, that I tell like a story like that in the moment, and then we dissect Liam's behavior in that moment, and we say, and that's the whole like Freudian id idea too. But like I think that's more fun, and it makes it more relevant for a student. Nobody wants to read for 45 minutes straight and have somebody lecture to them. That's so horrible, right? I mean, I would not enjoy that. And I love literature, but I would be bored out of my mind. We want to talk about it. That's how all art is. We want to connect, talk about why it moved us.
I remember when I had your class, this was one of my favorite things to do in your class. So I had Mr. Blackman. I think you were like my third period, my sophomore year. And I remember every day we'd walk in and we had our journals and he would write a question on the wall. And it was like something like mildly thought provoking. I mean, we weren't going like super deep, but you would just ask like, "What's your favorite song and why?" And it was just like to get you thinking, I think. Was that your goal?
Yeah, and believe it or not, I would sequence those questions with whatever we were doing that day. So if we were doing romanticism, then I would talk about I might ask like, do you make your decisions based on how you feel, or do you like a intuition, like this gut instinct, or do you like think through everything? Are you like a logical like analyzer, and that's kind of one of the tenets of romanticism, this idea of intuition, like going with that gut feeling. And so I might ask that and have you tell me an example of this or something. And, it usually was tied into whatever we were going to discuss that day. So you kind of get your brain thinking, and you ask the question that I think is the most important. It's the why. Why do you feel that way? Like that's the stuff that's by far the most interesting. Like nobody cares if I'm like, I saw this guy, they're like man of the year, the guy that holds up all the signs in New York City. You know that guy?
Yeah.
All right. And he was holding, it was like, nobody cares about your Spotify. And I was like, in a way that's right. That's correct. Nobody cares. But if you pick like one song out of that or one album out of that, and you just start talking about what that means to you, like if you did a social media post and you just said, "Here's my Spotify playlist," I bet it would have 2 likes, and those would be the friends that just click through and like everything. And then if you just wrote about one song and you wrote a paragraph and you said, "This song reminds me of my dad," and this, you'd probably get 50 comments. Because people relate to that, they connect to it. It touches us, and it connects us all together, as different as we are and as many different ideologies as we hold, like that touches something, and people are like, wow, I relate to that. I wish social media was more of that.
I do too. That makes so much more sense now because like on my Instagram stories, I'm not going to point out any names, but there's so many people, like their entire story, it'll be like 50 ticks and it's just song, no caption or anything. I'm like, why are you posting this in? It's just like throwing something into a void.
It,
And like sometimes I'll post a song. I do the same thing every now and then, but I have to be like, this song is worth sharing or something like that. Like there's
yeah.
a song called Sunset by the Midnight, and really if you look at it on a surface level, it's just a generic pop song about like having a good day. But if you like look into it and like what day I listen to it on, it's about like expanding your horizons. I listened to it on the day that I moved here to Atlanta to pursue my dreams, and I listened to it and I like cried. I was like, wow, I'm finally like chasing that sunset. And it was no longer a generic pop song. So I remember sharing that, and people were like, yo, this is awesome that you found meaning in that.
Yeah, if it was like a soundtrack to your life,
Mhm.
at that moment. And I think, and it goes to that base instinct in all of us is we all kind of want to relate. We all want to
Mhm.
just relate and say, man, that gripped me. That's what we want to do. That's how the and so for me, I've started to try to change my because I go through this love hate thing with social media and I delete it and because I get really kind of maybe this is me just being too sensitive, but I get all I see all these posts and some are so hateful and some are so just offensive. And not to say that I'm above that. I know that I am, I've had my moments, but um, I don't really want that. I don't want to put that stuff out there. So instead, I've tried to start just kind of being really vulnerable and saying like, "Hey, I love this thing. Here's how I feel about this," and just getting people's opinions and trying to relate and tie in. And it's amazing, like the responses you get, and it makes you actually kind of feel more. It lets you see those people from a more human side than just, oh, this person is, uh, you know, Democrat, Republican, or whatever other boxes you want to put them in. It allows you to kind of see the humanity in them, and you're like, oh, this is why. Like that song means something to you because it hit you in a certain moment, just like
Mhm.
that's why most people go back to music from their teens and 20s because they were defining who they were. And so those songs kind of hold hold that reign of that. They're the soundtrack to those definitive moments.
Is
Which is
there a time in your life that's, or is there a time in your life where you had like a soundtrack and anytime you go back to it, you're like immediately brought back to those days?
Oh man, Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream, and Weezer, the Blue Album will forever remind me of being a ninth grader. 1994, and I know Siamese Dream came out in '93, but I didn't find it till '94. And you know, anytime I hear those albums, I can even feel like the way I felt sitting in the classroom I was in, and 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 they obviously I kept listening to them throughout my life. So even in like my 20s on re-listen, you start to notice new elements. You're like, oh wow, like when when I started kind of moving forward in my faith, some of the lyrics from Siamese Dream were, hit me like, whoa, like, the line, we mutilate the meanings so they're easy to deny. Like, we take stuff, we twist it and we fit it to our window, our narrative, so it makes it easier to justify kind of what we're doing. That really blew my mind. That was some serious self-reflection that was involved with that. But I mean, there's tons of Trevor. We could probably spend 12 days talking about the albums and music that has like rocked me in a sense and made my jaw drop and just
Mhm.
been like, whoa, this is something. That's my favorite part about art in general is when you have something like that, and then it almost becomes a piece of you, like it like it's like you kind of own it, like in the sense you kind of own that song. I know that artist owns the rights to it, but you kind of own that song in that moment, and so it's really a strange dynamic.
Yeah, whenever I hung out with you in February, we talked a lot about like you discovered so much beauty in the world through like certain types of art. We talked about like S Town and
Mhm.
this docu series called Abandoned, which I still need to watch.
So
And you used words like, you know, I found beauty and this is so poetic.
yeah.
And I kind of wanted to ask you like, what makes something to you like, oh, that's beautiful, even though it's not like, you know, like a flower blooming in front of you or like a
Because S Town's pretty vulgar. And
yeah.
it's you know, and some of my favorite things are, you know, Slaughterhouse Five by Kurt Vonnegut is really vulgar. And I, you know, I think it's hard to put your finger on. I would say that it has to be something that's pretty um, that speaks some sort of truth, that, you know, connects with your life. Like, not everything that blows me away is going to blow you away, because we walk different paths. You know, we've experienced different things, is what I'm
Mhm.
saying in that. Like, and so things that are going to make me react are, you know, might not make you react in the same way. They might, and then when they do, we're like, whoa, we share that. But I think it's just you find little pieces of truth, and you're like, whoa, man, this is so true about my experience in life. You know, we're so subjective. We filter through the only way we've experienced things, which is self. And so I think that, you know, S Town in particular, I just loved. Probably it was probably an English teacher thing. The the writing is mind blowing. Especially episode 2 always sticks out in my head. The one where he goes into horology and he talks about like the makings of a clock and how intricate it is, and how if there's like one piece, you know, misfiring, the whole thing's thrown off. But like when they all work together, and that's very Vonnegut, like very like all these different elements, kind of complex elements working in this one to create this one thing. And he uses that as a parallel to John B, you know, and like the complexity that he's not just some, you know, country dude from Alabama. He's much more than that. And I think that speaks to the beauty of God's creation in my mind. You know, of course, I'm filtering it through my, you know, view, but and I look through a different lens. But I think that it just speaks on like like how incredibly intricate and beautiful each person is, each life is. You know, they like, you know, you like I watch your videos, and I've shared this with you, and you know, your voice, you know, and this is what I try to tell students too, your perspective is so unique. Like, you know, I started listening to this song. It's I'm gonna shout it out on here for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's such a simple line. It's Lee Fields is the artist, Lee Fields, and the expressions. And the song is Never Be Another You. And it's like a real soulful jam.
Mhm.
And it is, but it's so accurate. Like, with all your flaws and imperfections and things that you think are bad, and you know, they're like, we're all such uniquely created, you know, grains of sand. And that was what I found, kind of thematically with that episode. And it was so true. So it was like, it was kind of subtly, and I will say this. I do a really bad job of immediately answering your questions, but I'm kind of talking my way into an answer probably. But I think also for great art, subtlety is key. Like, you know, if I wrote a song and I was like, I love you, girl, I love you, girl, oh, I love you, girl, like, you'd be like, okay, have you heard that? Have you heard something
A
like that?
million
A
times.
million times. I did not say anything that was unique at all. I mean, we should just pack it up and be done. That's been said. But if I find a unique way to say it that's definitively me, then I probably created something that is at least a little bit interesting. Ben Folds talks about that in his memoir, just that idea of, creating. And so like when he writes about John B, he's talking about the clock, and John B is a horologist. And it's just an interesting way. I'd never heard it said like that. And so I'm like, wow, this is really well done, really well pulled together. So I think those moments when there's an art of subtlety and an art of depth there, when you have those two going together, and that's been my trope for a while, like that Nickelback is trash, and I really just run that joke into the ground now for purpose of that. But the idea is, they're not subtle. It's just so blunt, and I can't, I don't find anything new in it. So, and if you like Nickelback, good for you, whoever, that I'm not, you're just less of a person. No, I'm joking.
You're just trash.
I don't believe that at all. You can like Nickelback. There's a lot of things I like that lack depth. So, but that's just my running joke with that.
I find that fascinating though about subtlety, and I feel like people think like subtlety is just kind of like a almost manipulative like form of just like communicating. But in like everything, I think subtlety is key. Like with comedy, like nobody likes a joke that's just like played out and you have to like a fart. It's like a fart joke. Like there's nothing to get. There's no depth to it. But then you've got people like, Bo Burnham or Dimitri Martin that have all these layers of depth in their jokes.
Yeah. And it goes back to that initial question you posed talking about journals that have you do. It's that why, like, you can dig into that and you can get people thinking, whoa, that to me is, that's an art, the art of subtlety. That's, been written about a ton. But yeah, that to me is something to strive for. And, it's not often that stuff comes along that just blows me away. And I'm like, whoa, I'm getting old now. I turned 40 since you left. And so it's been a while since I've heard something, that I'm like, whoa, but every now and then it comes in and you're like, this is really well done. I enjoy this.
So do you think it's a matter of intelligence for people to understand subtlety, or for someone to go, oh, yay, fart joke?
Oh man, you're gonna put me in a coffin here, aren't you? I don't know if I would say, because I don't necessarily. I mean, there are millions of people smarter than me. I just think that I'm not sure, because there's a lot of things I like that have no subtlety. I mean, I think Dumb and Dumber is hilarious, and there's very little subtlety in that movie. But so I mean, I'm not sure in the creation of that subtlety. Yes, I think there's definitely an intelligence to the craft. But in the reception of it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure to what level. I think maybe experience has to come in play a lot, because there's some stuff that I recognize as really intelligent, but I don't really vibe with. I'm sure you feel that way too, where everybody's like, this is brilliant. And you're like, it's not my thing, but you can see the brilliance in it. And so, I don't know.
One thing that comes to my mind is, have you seen Interstellar?
Yes, I have seen Interstellar.
That is one thing everybody was like, dude, it's just like the smartest thing I've ever seen. You're going to love it, dude. And I was like ready. I like remember opening night, I sat there and I was just like, whoa. And initially I was like, this is great. I love this. And then I watched it again and I was just like, this is trying too hard to be deep, I think.
All right.
Oh, Marv.
Yeah, I mean, you got Wooderson as the main character. No, I mean, I enjoy that movie. It's not one of my favorites. It didn't like blow my mind apart, but I like it all right. I don't think it's poorly done.
Oh
Um,
no, I
but
can't say it's a bad movie.
yeah, like it, and it just might not have struck a chord with you. I mean, one thing that I have wanted to like for a long time, full disclosure, that I've tried to and I just can't get into it. I get into, and the hardest part of it is I get into things that have elements of it and I really love the elements of it, but not the real thing, is jazz. Um, like I know jazz, especially good jazz is intelligent and complex, and I just can't vibe with it. But I like things that have elements of jazz in it. When it's like, when Ben Folds Five would go on like a jazz flare, or I used to listen to this band Farrakhan, and they would throw in these weird jazz chords, and I thought it just sounded so amazing. Then I listened to like legends of jazz, I just don't. It doesn't get me. But I realize the brilliance of it, but it just doesn't.
Just
Maybe,
doesn't strike a chord with you.
yeah, it doesn't hit me. And I think that's okay. Not everybody's going to agree. Sometimes a lot agree. It's kind of crazy and scary when like the Beatles is pretty freakish. Like this is like 2/3 of the Earth's population are like, this is brilliant. Like that's pretty wild. So yeah.
But I think with the brilliance of the Beatles is not really their lyrics. I mean, I want to hold your hand. There's absolutely no subtlety with that. You say exactly.
They grew that. Blackbird is pretty brilliant. When I found out what it was about, that made my mind go.
What is it about again?
So Blackbird, from what I've read, Paul McCartney wrote it, and he had come to the U.S. and this was in the civil rights era, and had witnessed the treatment of African Americans, and was horrified by it, and wrote the song. Blackbird singing in the dead of night, take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free, and the idea was just like, your moment's gonna come, and it is just so subtle, and like, that's a civil rights song, and it's pretty brilliant. So they evolved. I mean, I agree. I want to hold your hand. That's maybe what I was ripping off earlier when I made up my song.
I love you, girl.
Yeah,
you got a hit song already, dude.
I got a hit song.
But like the brilliance of the Beatles, I think, was also in their instrumentals, because like nobody was writing songs like that at the time. Like everybody was like, "Whoa! Like a guitar can do this. Like drums can do this." Like that was so new to everyone.
Maybe Muddy Waters, maybe like some of the blues people, but they weren't known. Like,
yeah.
I remember Kurt Cobain in an interview. People are like, "Oh, how did you find this sound?" And he's like, "We're just the Pixies." Like, we're just, we're the Pixies. Or he's like, "We're just Cheap Trick with like fuzzy distortion," or like he made all these jokes, but in a sense he's like, it's kind of true. But I guess it also takes the audience. Timing is really important. Isn't that a weird thing? Like timing is really important. Like if your timing is bad, like
Yeah, there's a video I want to send you. You may have seen it. Have you heard of this video series called Everything is a Remix?
It rings a bell.
It's one of my favorite video series of all time. It basically talks about, it's pretty much a video series to make you feel better about not being original. And the first example he uses is like, he's like, Star Wars is not an original movie. Like it takes from a lot of things. It's an original story because of all these things. And it's just like, whoa, like I didn't know Star Wars was like that. And then it goes even deeper, like into like literature and like art and everything. And it's super fascinating.
Yeah, the really crazy thing is when you see how much Shakespeare has shaped the modern world and modern art. It's pretty terrifying. Because you're like, oh wow, that's just Shakespearean. But we also have, in literature, we talk about like Jesus Christ archetype. You have, if you're reading, every book has this character that's come to like, well, not every book, but a lot of books, it's an archetype, have this character that comes to save everybody and be like, hey, they usually stand for like the opposite of the society or the setting or whatever, and they clash against it and they try to change it. Batman, crime-filled Gotham City, I'm going to try to change it. And so there are these, that sounds kind of like what that video is. It's like, this is a archetype, this has been done. And probably true in a sense. Solomon even writes about that. I know there's not, well, it's
nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Ecclesiastes. So, probably right. Even my beautiful I Love You Girl song, somewhere somebody wrote that, probably with that same melody.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about, or he like wraps it up. He's not trying to be like, you're stupid, you're never going to come up with anything original. And he's not like saying that's not a possibility, but I think he also talks about how it's okay to take inspiration from other things and make it your own. Like, take this talk show. This is by far the least original thing I could have ever like put on the internet. A guy talking to another guy on the show about whatever. Even our conversations haven't been original. Like, every word has been said before, and it's unique because I'm talking to you and you're talking to me, and I'm putting it on this. So
there's chapter 2 of S-Town for you, right? Like, unique fabrics, like all those parts of the clock are not necessarily unique, but when all of them are together and all working right, it creates a unique clock. And so that's a interesting thought to have. What's your shirt? I'm curious.
Oh, it's Macho Man.
Oh, okay, there we go.
I actually got it today and I was like, I gotta wear this. My roommate Nathan was encouraging me to buy this shirt. He was like, dude, you gotta buy it, because everybody in the house has like a wrestling shirt sort of, and I was like, I need to have one.
Yeah, WWE was an essential business, according to Florida,
which is hilarious.
I mean, people need their wrestling.
My favorite thing that attempted to be labeled as an essential business was GameStop. And I'm like, I can't think of a less essential business.
I mean, yeah, and I'm not gonna go on a political rant, but I did laugh that for Georgia, when they were like, we're gonna reopen stuff, like bowling alleys were like the third thing listed. And I mean, the people that work at bowling alleys, they need to feed their families too. I understand that. But it was just so funny that was like the third thing. He was like, think about everything that could open up. Restaurants, barbers and salons, bowling alleys. Why does that like maybe our governor's just an avid bowler, and he was like, we're getting this league. It's happening. But yeah, I mean,
that's actually why he was doing it. He just wanted bowling alleys open.
Not knocking it. I love bowling alleys. I mean, I have fun at
bowling
alleys, so you're not gonna hear me bash them.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing like what I saw. Some people were like protesting like Baskin Robbins, like, we want Baskin Robbins open. I'm like, how desperate are you to put sugar in your body?
I mean, people want what they want. I was driving out to get groceries, and the line for Krispy Kreme was the craziest thing that it was like the people waiting for Krispy Kreme had made a car donut around. It was like an infinity donut. Like, it was like going around the building once, and then it wrapped around a second time, and then it went out into the road. And I mean, you're talking like 20 something cars waiting for Krispy Kreme. And I was just like, wow, what is going on at Krispy Kreme? And then I looked up and they had like this like new chocolate glazed donut. And I was like, that makes sense. You know,
That's insane. My friend Matt, he posted this on Facebook yesterday, but Cinco de Mayo was yesterday. And there was like restaurants that were just packed. And I was like,
it's Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo. It was the perfect storm.
Yeah. So they had to open.
I mean, that's it, man. That's their time to blow it out of the water, I guess. And so they had to open up at that time.
Yeah. Do you think there will ever be a time where you're like, I think it's okay to go out, even if like the world just opens up?
I mean, we're pretty careful. I'm the only one that goes out. We walk in the neighborhood, but we're in this quiet little neighborhood. But I'm the only one that goes out. I go to the grocery store. I have gloves, I have a mask, and I get my stuff and load it up. Then I have hand sanitizer in the car and use that immediately, and then wash my hands after I get home. And so we're pretty careful. I'm not sure what's gonna. I mean, if everything is open, if schools are open, I have to go work. But I'm kind of curious. I wonder if obviously schools are closed. Remote learning through this school year, but I wonder if it opens up in the fall. I'm kind of curious. Like I've seen reports from every angle. But is it? One question in my head is this the new normal, at least until there's a viable vaccine? Are we doing this for like a year?
Mm-hmm.
That would be wild.
That would be wild. So I work at DDP Yoga, and most of our clientele are elderly people, like people over the age of like 60 and 70. And our boss Dallas was just like, it'd be stupid to open it up right now, because like that could be on us if like they were to get the disease here or something. And I'm just like, that's fine, because I wouldn't want that to be open either. So I've been working from home.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I wonder, like, I read somebody was saying like this is like kind of a game changer, that a lot of businesses are probably going to realize we can still just kind of work from home. Like we can do what we did and do it remotely. So I do think some businesses will change. I mean, I miss community. I want to be safe, and I'm going to be safe. But I do miss, the community aspect. I like being around people.
Me too.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have any real, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an economist. So I'm just kind of seeing what happens and obeying the rules and laws as we go, and so like we're not going to go. I don't think we're going to go eat in a restaurant right now. We have picked up to go from a couple of our local restaurants to support them, and done some stuff like that. But I don't know, man. I guess, it's kind of up to everybody. You determine, like, is it safe to, I'm not sure it's quite safe right now to go dine in a restaurant. But,
absolutely not. I wouldn't do that.
I mean, but I mean, once again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to criticize somebody who goes and who opens their restaurant trying to make money for their family and for other people's families, or somebody who goes and supports that person. I don't know if it's my spot to be the judge and jury. I definitely don't have enough education or intelligence to make that claim or call. But for me and my family, we're gonna chill and like just chilling here.
Yeah, earlier you talked about you think it's important for humans to be a part of a community. And I've taken that to be true like throughout my life. Like, in high school I was in the theater club and the media club, and like even on the soccer team. And those were all like very unique like communities, and I enjoyed all three of them. But why do you think it's important for people to be a part of something?
It grows us and it stretches us. Being in a community offers us the chance to both, and you're probably understanding where I filter everything from, but it offers us a chance to give grace and give redemption and receive it. And so I think, to me, those are kind of the hallmarks of love. And that sacrifice, that idea of, like, for forgiving somebody or sacrificing for them or having it done for you, like, that's kind of the height of reward. And I think that sense of community just builds us up and helps us grow as people. We learn from experience, and you experience by being in a community, and you get different trials and tribulations, and they grow us, they stretch us. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes it's really painful, but it alters us in some regard, and I think that's important. And I just think it's really important. Is it Woody Allen that says people are like sharks? If they stop moving, they die. And I'm paraphrasing, but that idea is, I think it's important for us to get out and be amongst people and, revel in the joy of creation.
Absolutely. And I've thankfully, like, I live in a community pretty much, and you kind of do too. Like, you have your family, but for people that are like in, New York City and these like tiny, like 5x5 apartments, that's just like, I don't understand how you can do that like every day for even a week.
And that's been a worry I've seen on the news of, like, mental health of people, just being so isolated. I think it's important to reach out to those people and pull them in and include them. But yeah, I mean, I just think that aspect is so, it's just such a necessity, and it's tough. I mean, this is a tough time for a lot of people in different ways, but it's hard to just kind of be in. You're not, sharing these moments anymore. So that's kind of wild.
Yeah, I have some friends like here even in Atlanta that they live on their own, and they're like, they've asked us like a couple times, like, can we come hang out on your front porch? And I'm like, no, like, not yet, dude. So, it really like hurts my heart seeing like how many people have to like go through loneliness that are just, they were not prepared for a global pandemic like this.
I mean, I don't think any of us were, in the sense, but it's, yeah, it is, those people, that is, I can't imagine. I think it's taught us too, like, it seems like it'd be so awesome. There's this, in Office Space, where he's like, what would you do if you had $1 million? And he's like, nothing. Like, and the guy's like, nothing, but I don't think that's true. I think that would be quite awful. And I think, like, there's beauty in the slowdown too, but I'd say the vast majority of people are kind of like, despite political leanings, I think everybody is like, we wish this was just over, it would just
Oh
disappear.
yeah.
And then we could go back to having to wake up at 6 o'clock and drink coffee, and there's some night. I mean, I get to sleep now till like 7:45, and have my cup of coffee with my wife, and we sit there and we talk. But yeah, I would trade that at this point for having to wake up at 5:30 and getting kids out the door and going to school.
Yeah, I used to wake up at like 8:30 a.m. and I'd have to be at work by 10. Much more lenient wake up time than yours. But like I miss that, like the normalcy of getting up and, getting ready for work and, having the cup of coffee, like driving to work and just seeing everybody. Like it was so nice. And I think like a lot of people like wish to have a life of like, man, I wish I could wake up and not expect what's going to happen. And I'm just like, I disagree with that. Like normalcy is important, I think, for humans.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this has been, yeah. I miss the routines of, yeah, I miss all that. And I mean, I know we'll get back to it, but it's, that question of like when will that happen? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't have any of the answers.
Yeah, I'm just talking, man. I'm not like, please, Mr. Blackman, I need to know what to do.
I'm smart enough to know that I don't know.
That's good.
I wish that was an answer for a lot.
But
it's okay.
Tucker, like we're nearing like the last couple minutes of the show. Usually I try to keep them around an hour. So I thought I'd end it with like, what do you remember of me from high school for everyone to hear?
Oh man. I mean, you were always a very sweet person. Like you always had a kind, sweet spirit to you. And I would say like one part of your personality too. I think it's elements of it are still there, but you've definitely grown up, you've matured. But I feel like at times back then you had the tendency to zone at times. You know what I'm talking about? Like,
yeah,
kind of. You were in Trevor world at moments, and then it'd be like, Trevor, it's Earth, come on, and you'd kind of come back in, and I remember this. I remember this. We were reading something, and we were reading Frankenstein, I think, and I was just kind of going around doing a real Socratic thing, asking the class like, okay, this, and it was just spitballing, and you were just kind of like, just looking off a little bit. And I remember I looked and I was like, all right, well, I'll, and I try to be, I don't want to embarrass students in class or anything. That's not a goal, I was always like I want to get them in. I might joke around with them, but I remember like as a teacher, I was like, okay. And so I remember like, I'll ask him a more straightforward, easy question. And I asked you like something about like, which city do you think impacted this character and where, and it was like, the choices were like Paris, London, and like one of the characters was named Clerval.
I remember this.
And you just like, you gave me the like, when I said your name and I asked the question like really quickly, and you gave me the like, you turned like, oh my gosh. I could tell that like you didn't even like fully hear the whole question. And you just like stare straight ahead and you just go, and the question was which city, and you just go, Clerval. Like, and the whole class erupted in laughter. And then I remember I like asked the question again, and you of course knew, and then you were able to explain like, oh, it was this city and here's why. But it was just one of those like, Trevor has zoned out and like not here, and so
I think the context of that situation is even funnier. So the same situation happened, but so Tucker came in and he was like, all right, we're gonna have a quiz, but I'm gonna ask everybody, I'm gonna like pick people 10 questions, and if you guys all get them right, then there won't be a quiz. And so Tucker goes through 9 kids and they all get them right, and then he looks at me and he's like, Trevor. And I remember I was just like, oh no. And then I was just not paying attention. You asked the question and I get it wrong. And the entire class is like, Trevor, no. And you're like, all right, here's the quiz. And you like handed it out and we had to write it down. And everybody's just like, look at me like, oh, you
Oh,
stupid
no.
idiot.
I don't think I would do that nowadays. I don't think I would put a student in that spot to be like destroyed by their class. That's definitely that. Yeah, I mean, that was a rookie mistake for me, bro. But that makes it.
I think it's funny, but like nobody like left the classroom and they were like, we're not friends anymore. So you didn't ruin my social status or anything.
I haven't been back to Cleveland, Tennessee.
That's actually why I moved here to Atlanta.
Terrible people like, yeah. So yeah, that could be something. You're like, it wasn't that big a deal, and it like shows you going like up to Cleveland and like pulling through like the Crystal drive-through, and like one of your like old classmates is like in there managing. They're like, "Sup, Clerval," and you're like,
I just like break down.
Yeah. No.
It's not Clerval, it's Trevor. That's so funny.
Like, that would be bad. Yeah. Oh.
But yeah, I had a lot of great memories in your classroom and on the soccer field. Like I remember another moment where I zoned out and I got in a lot of trouble on the soccer field. We were doing some kind of drill, and Tucker was like, I think he was like just passing the ball to us, and he was like, Trevor, and I just was like, just not even paying attention. And then you said my name like 3 times, and then the entire team just goes, Trevor. And I immediately like turn around and you go, is your name Trevor? And I was like, yes, I'm sorry. And then everybody was just like, dude, come on.
That's so it's brutal. Yeah.
Very embarrassing.
Yeah. It's those times, I mean, I think that's just part of being a teenager too, like zoning in and out. But you don't seem to have those qualities as much anymore. You maybe you're more control it. I feel like it was like a daydreaming quality. Like you would just kind of, and that's a creative mind that does that, you know?
Yeah, I never really just zoned out and just like, TV static. That's kind of how I was as a kid. I was always thinking about something, and I still have that sometimes, but that's another reason kind of why I started this show, was to like get better at just like talking to people. Because like when I was a teenager, I remember people would talk to me and I would just zone out, and then they would finish their sentence and I would just be like,
what is the Simpsons episode where Homer's like, my mind's going a mile a minute, and it goes up in his head, and there are like 2 monkeys, and one is like picking bugs off the other one's back, and that's all that's happening. He's like just staring straight ahead. Or there's also a movie where the main character does that. They just like zone, and it goes into this fantastical world, and then but the reality is they're just kind of sitting there like staring straight ahead.
yeah.
You don't seem to, you seem to have a good reign on that.
Yeah, I guess I just realized, like, look, with my career path and like where I want to go in life, I have to talk to people. That's like one of the most important things. Like if I'm in an interview and the boss is just like, so Trevor, tell me about your best qualities, and I'm just like, yeah. And that's like my response.
What? Clerval?
Did you say Clerval?
No.
But yeah, like I realized that, and so I guess I had to like trick my brain into being like just laser focus in on what people are saying. And
you are boring me.
I'm sorry, you're not as interesting as what's going on in my brain. 2 monkeys picking bugs off each other.
So bad.
That's so funny. But dude, like, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a blast.
Had fun.
Yeah, man, would love to have you on again. Hope you and your family are doing well and continue to do well and stay safe.
We're doing well, man. Great to see you, Trevor.
Heck yeah. Have a blessed day, everybody.